This is our Quadratics Review Part 2 for the final exam. The two types of factoring we need to be able to do for the final will be common factoring and simple factoring. The first type, common factoring, we're looking for what's called the greatest common factor. First, we want to search for the largest number that's going to divide into each term. Then we want to look at the variable parts. For each of the variable coefficients, we want to find out the lowest power. So in this case, if we look at the numbers 3, 6, and 9, the largest number that would divide into each of those evenly would be 3. So that's the first part of my common factor, and I'm going to put that out front. Now I want to look at the x's. We have an x to the 1, an x squared, and an x to the 1. So just an x would be the lowest power. Now if we look at the y's, y squared, we have a y to the 1, and this one doesn't have a y, so we can't actually pull out any y's. If we look at the z's, z cubed, z to the 4th, and z cubed would be the lower power. So 3x z cubed would be my greatest common factor that I'm going to pull out. Now I need to see what's left over when I divide each term by that greatest common factor. We started with 3 terms, so we're going to end up with 3 terms inside our bracket. When we divide something by itself, it gives us a 1. So 3 divided by 3 is a 1, x divided by x is a 1, z cubed divided by z cubed is a 1. So the only thing that we need to write down, the leftovers from the first term, would just be a y squared because everything else was just a 1. Plus 6 divided by 3 gives us 2. X squared divided by x. X is to the exponent 1, so when I subtract the exponents, I get an x to the 1. Y is still left behind. And z to the 4th divided by z cubed, if I subtract 4 minus 3, I get z to the 1. So that's using those exponent laws that we talked about this semester as well. The last term, I'm just going to give myself a little bit more room here. If I divide 9 by 3, I would get 3. So plus 3. X divided by x would be a 1, and z cubed divided by z cubed would also be a 1. So it's just plus 3. I want to double check when I'm done. I started with 3 terms up here, and I ended up with 3 terms in my leftovers bracket. The second type of factoring is called simple factoring. What I want to do for simple factoring is look for 2 numbers that multiply to the last term and add to the middle term's coefficient. So in this case, I want to think of 2 factors that multiply to positive 6 and add to negative 5. If I want to add to a negative number and add to if I want to multiply to a positive number and add to a negative number, what I'm going to have to do is make both of the terms negative. So x is going to be the first term in each bracket. I'm going to make both of them negative because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a negative plus a negative is a negative. 2 numbers that multiply to 6. So I could do 6 and 1. Negative 6 plus negative 1 would be negative 7. So that doesn't give us negative 5. The other option would be 3 and 2. Negative 3 plus negative 2 would give us negative 5. So x minus 3 times x minus 2 would give us x squared minus 5x plus 6. So that's now fully factored. We can also combine these together, these 2 types of factoring. So I could give a question like 2x squared minus 10x plus 12. And for that one, there's a common factor of 2 that I can pull out first. So I have to start by dividing each term by 2. And then I'm actually going to get the question from above. So x squared minus 5x plus 6 is left over. And then I can simple factor that. So I have to common factor first and then simple factor. And I know that 2 numbers that multiply to positive 6 and add to negative 5 from above were x minus 3 and x minus 2. And the 2 is sitting out front. So be aware that sometimes you'll have to do both types of factoring.